This past weekend, my son was away, my husband was working out of town, and I found myself with a quiet house and a wide open Saturday morning. Instead of doing my usual routine, I took out my coffee to the patio, I opened up my daughter's wedding planning file, and I stayed there for 3 hours, just imagining, anticipating, picturing all the details of what that day could feel like. And somewhere in those 3 hours, it hit me. It's not the expectations that are the problem. Maybe the expectations are actually the fun. What if we've been trying to let go of the very thing that's been fueling us all along? Welcome to the Confident Homeschool Mom podcast. I'm Teresa Wiedrick, homeschool life coach, graduated homeschool mom, and author of the book Homeschool Mama Self-Care. This is the podcast for the mom who looks capable on the outside, but feels scattered and unsure on the inside. My work focuses inward because most homeschool overwhelm has nothing to do with the curriculum. It has everything to do with the pressure, the perfectionism, and the old scripts we carry inside. If you're new here, welcome. You found the episode for a reason. For every homeschool mom, I want to remind you that you are the most important curriculum in your homeschool. Okay, so let's get into today's episode. So I'm sitting here in Studio C, my walk-in closet, and I'm trying to think, what is the title of this episode? Why you shouldn't let go of expectations, or an argument for expectation? I really like incorporating the concept of great expectations, but Fitzgerald doesn't have anything quotable to directly relate unless I read you long passages from the novel Great Expectations. So I think I'll leave that one. You've heard me say that I'm the queen of unrealistic expectations. And I know, I'm declarative. I'm the one with the podcast here. And you likely also are the queen, co-queen of unrealistic expectations. I've learned that we homeschool moms, we are so dang capable and have wild expectations. But on this episode, I want to talk about why we want to keep them, why they're valuable. Let's talk about a reframe on expectation. I actually don't think that our expectations are a bad thing. I think they're a very good thing. They get us to help ideate a beautiful life. We would never have done this homeschool thing if we didn't imagine what it would be like to be with our kids all day long, like the good parts, when we get to discover that they really love a deep dive on a particular topic. And we just look at that and go, wow, how did that happen? I didn't even introduce it to them. Where did they learn about that? That's so cool. They're so smart. I saw those moments in my own kids' their lives, and I know that you're seeing it too, because I also have the privilege of walking alongside you and hearing about how your kiddos overcome their lack of ability to read because they've had learning challenges. Or I've got to watch one kiddo become an award-winning BMX racer. I've heard about kids that are doing professional gymnastics competitions. I've heard about kids who fall in love with Minecraft and then actually create Minecraft servers for their friends and themselves. I've heard all elements. I've heard so many different stories about your kids. And I think your kids are amazing, just like I think my kids are amazing. When kids are left to their own devices, they can do some pretty amazing things. And when we create space for them like we have, we give them an opportunity to create amazing lives. I also think that expectations really serve us because they're the reason that we decided to do this thing in the first place. We would not have taken on this big, hairy, audacious goal of educating our kids in the four walls of our homes, or probably in the four walls of our community. We would not have taken on this role of education, this raising up all different elements of their childhood, their lives, if we had not assumed that it would be an amazing thing. We had great expectations, and we still look forward in anticipation of what might be because we are creating and offering the space for them. But there's no question that how we frame our expectations affects how we are going to enjoy this whole thing, how much we're going to enjoy living this life over the long term, and also how sustainable it is. If we could reframe our expectations, if we could just look at them honestly or look at them with wise eyes and ask ourselves, the way we're thinking about our life, our kids' lives, their education, how we're framing this whole experience, is it making enjoy this process? Is it encouraging us to enjoy it? Or are we looking at it and always feeling like we're behind, it's not enough, and questioning whether it's as good as somebody else's? That's the challenge, to look at our expectations with wise eyes. If we can even just look at the expectations honestly, we can enable that 1% shift that I've spoken about in a variety of episodes over the last few weeks. 1% shift. If we take a 1% shift in assessing our expectations, we might just notice that some of the things that we thought were realistic were not. Or perhaps some of the expectations, some of the anticipation actually is really beautiful fuel for doing this life. As I begin having this conversation with you about expectations, I'm wondering what it is that you think you might expect that might be either not realistic or an absolute requirement for you to do this thing, or is perfectly reasonable that you have this expectation. What comes up for you? I would like to hear. If you would send me a message over the socials, Instagram at Homeschool Life Coach, Facebook now at Homeschool Life Coach, I would love to hear. Or if you're a Patreon member, whether you're free or a paid Patreon member at the Confident Homeschool Mom Collective, I'm going to have a conversation with you in the membership all week. So head over there and let's chat. I'm not going to list the possible expectations, not all of them, because I feel like I'm working with women to help them be realistic in their expectations around their child's capacity and also around their capacity, around, different concepts of whether the child actually can really learn or how much they can take in various times of the day, or how likely a child is able to be an independent learner and whether or not they've had enough training in it, or whether kids are able to be independent learners or not, whether you have enough time in the day to actually accomplish all the things you hope to do. But probably most importantly, and the thing that most people don't even ask themselves, do I have enough emotional and energetic capacity to do all the things that I hope to do from Monday to Friday for 180 instructional days a year? Or if you're an all-year schooler, 365 days a year for 2 decades. We don't ask that question. We need to ask that question. Do you have capacity and energy? So often the conversation around homeschooling is how to do it. And of course, that has a place. And of course, it influences our capacity and our fuel to continue to do it. But we haven't asked ourselves the question, do you have the capacity and the fuel to do this life? Maybe certain weeks of the month you have more capacity. If you are a homeschool mom, then this applies to you, because there are not 4 weeks out of a month or 4.5 weeks out of a month where you have energy to engage in the same way. We all know this, but we don't actually factor it in to our calendars. Early on in my homeschool years, I assumed that after co-op, we'd go home and we'd finish up the studies for the week, because we usually had co-op on Friday mornings. I now see, I am not alone in this, the kids get into that minivan or your vehicle after you finish co-op, and they have mini meltdowns, or at least one child does, right? And you got to have the snacks ready. And sometimes you have to just say, hey, listen to an audio and quietly do our drawing while we go home, because the energy is a lot. And sure enough, there will be at least 2 kiddos arguing with each other, or somebody will just have their mini meltdown. And of course, that's okay, but we can actually anticipate it and plan for it. What I did in the earlier years is assume that I could go home, we could have lunch, and then we could finish the rest of the week. We could finish the things we'd had planned. No, actually, you need to just stop. Full stop. Co-op is a day when you are done after you leave co-op, because kids just aren't as emotionally available. They're just not as energetically available, and neither are you. And this isn't a fault. It's not failure. It's just a reality. It's why we don't also want to fault schooled kids when they come home and they're kind of tapped and they don't feel like doing a whole bunch of homework right after school. It's because they need a break. Their minds have been full all day, even if they didn't have a full day of instructional time, which they don't. But even if they didn't, they still have constant social interaction. There's just like an energetic movement going on all the time when one person moves to another place or someone asks, hey, can I ask a question? Or pass around the pencils or whatever it is they're doing. But there's a lot of activity going on and they're processing it. So when they come home, they're not looking to go right into some more homework or to go into something emotionally, mentally stimulating. Not most kids. Same thing with our kids who go to co-ops and forest schools and all sorts of extracurriculars. We need to accommodate that they actually have spent their energy for this part of the day and they need to take a break. And so do you. So do you. I think another expectation, a really big one that we have, is that we will always enjoy our homeschool days. I do hope that I have brought enough pragmatism to the world of homeschooling to suggest that there ain't no way you're going to enjoy every day. It's just not going to happen. Life will throw some things to you that you were definitely not expecting. Some things that have nothing to do with homeschooling, of course. Things like broken marriages and lost jobs and sick parents and travel plans or travel plans that were kiboshed. So many possible challenges, right? Can I hear an amen? I wish it weren't true, but the reality is life does not give you what you want. No, life does give you a box of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get until you open or until you bite into it. That's right, right? At the outset of this episode, I told you my goal was to help you reframe your expectations, to actually declare that expectations are a beautiful thing, not to try to persuade you not to expect things. I don't think that's a really effective way to go through life. I actually think there's a lot of value in assuming, and wait for this, okay? Especially in this day and age, you're going to probably wonder if what I'm about to say is a bunch of hooey. I really think you might think it's a bunch of hooey. I think that we need to assume that everyone is kind and has a good heart. I'll just let that one land. I know. See? Hooey? Oh, I get it. It's so easy to assume otherwise, especially the last, let's call it a while. We definitely don't assume the best in everyone. But if you are to walk throughout life always anticipating that everyone is going to do you wrong and that no one can be trusted, that's a really hard life. That's a very lonely life. So the alternative is to expect the best, to expect, just wait and see, the best is yet to be. And I think the same is true for our plans in our homes, our intentions towards our kids, our values, our goals for this home educating life. If we didn't have those great expectations, would we really want to be here? It's exciting to anticipate what we could create and offer to our kids. It's exciting to watch them grow another inch or 2 inches or 3 inches, or if you're like my son, seems like he grew possibly an inch or two overnight or over the last weekend, and I'm looking up to him and barely able to hug him. And did that happen after this weekend? But I digress. It is exciting to watch them grow up and learn things and really fully embrace their life and do interesting things. It's a beautiful thing. We want to expect so many things in our life. We don't want to have no expectations. We don't want low expectations. We want to assume the best is yet to come. And also be realistic. I think the twain can meet. I think those two things can meet. I think sometimes with challenge, but they certainly can meet. So on Sunday, I was outside in the garden planting, like one of the most beautiful places, I think, in the world is in your garden. And I did it because one of my girls is also planting a garden. And I remember when early, even before we homeschooled, I was so eager to garden. I had this huge patch at the back of our home. And I've never gardened until then. I had an entire packet of zucchini seeds and I planted every single one of them, all 19 plants. I think I had 144 zucchinis that year. I also had a lot of carrots and I have this beautiful photo of my 2 girls holding their huge bushels of dirty carrots and they were smudged with dirt everywhere, but they were so proud of themselves as they pulled those carrots into the house and learned to wash them and pickle them or just eat them fresh with hummus. It was a beautiful moment, and I was excited to share that with them. Fast forward almost 2 decades, a little less than 2 decades, and here I am having a chat with my daughter who's planting her own garden. All those moments that you show the kid how to seed a carrot or care for a baby kitty or teach your kids how to build a birdhouse or write a poem, all those moments become their childhood, and all those moments become the story of your motherhood. They bring you great joy long after you finish home educating your kids. Ask me how I know. I don't think we need to ask ourselves if we're being unrealistic with our expectations. I think we could ask ourselves a different question. Could you be more satisfied and joy-filled in your days? Could you? If you're not sure where your dissatisfaction originates, you could consider taking the assessment that I created for that purpose. It is a quiz. You can find it on the first page of my website under the header at the top called quiz. And if you're not sure where your dissatisfaction originates, consider taking that assessment. No one is guaranteed perfect days in their life, and that's not going to happen. Every human will find other humans frustrating at times. That's a guarantee. Even the little ones that you make or that you adopt into your family, you will also find frustrating days with them. But I know you know that. If your days, though, aren't as happy as you hope they would be, you can change that. It doesn't have to stay the way that it is. If you feel like your expectations are dashed, do something about it. If you feel like the expectations you've had around this past homeschool year, or if you feel like you've been really disappointed by it, or you feel like this is really not the way that I expected it to be, do something about it. Most homeschool support will focus on the outward, the kids, how they're learning, the curriculum, the method, and definitely the schedule. And though I definitely address all of those things within coaching, my focus is on the woman running it all, you. Can we do a homeschool vibe check? I want to ask you 6 questions to help you get clear. Where are you at this time of year? So first question, how much of your days do you enjoy? How do you want to feel? How do you want your kids to feel? Are you having fun? How many of your days feel frustrated or dysregulated? And probably the most important question, which is cliche but spot on, what is your ultimate goal for this homeschool life? What's your why? You got to start with your why. In the last 2 weeks, I started a new YouTube series called the 7-Day Confident Homeschool Roadmap for first-year homeschoolers. And the second thing I shared, stop 1 in our roadmap, is start with your why. But you keep coming back to your why. You don't just start with it. You have to keep coming back to it and say, oh yeah, why am I doing this again? Why? Because the why definitely will change over the course of time. It'll deepen. It'll so much more deeply than you thought it would. And it will feel so compelling when you see the clarity of the why that you determine that you have to figure out why you're doing this life the way you're doing it. When you do, when you get clear, you will discover there are some things that you expected of yourself, that you expected of your kids, that you expected of your time, that you expected of your energy and capacity, that you were never going to achieve. It was never meant to be, and it was an unrealistic expectation. If you've been hanging around me for long enough, you know that Sarah Susanka's book, The Not So Big Life, had a really huge impact on me. I read that book, I reread that book every December for about a decade and a half. And every December, I have a workshop that is built from that book. She shares this. I also had an amazing conversation with her here on the podcast a few years ago. It's titled The Not So Big Homeschool. So Sarah had shared her one paragraph in her book really fits this conversation right now. So I wanted to share it with you. She said, by implementing the plans as the remodeler of your own life, you'll find that in only a short period of time, the way you were living changes dramatically. There will be more light, more delight, more awareness of the beauty that surrounds you, and there will be more room to breathe and to engage in the things you really care about. Not a coincidence that her tagline for her Not So Big Life book is making room for what really matters. I think that's the point. If you want to scale down your expectations, not take them away entirely because they give us so much joy and fuel for our lives. But when you pare them down or you look at them, you assess them, you say to yourself, does it really matter? That's really the question we're asking when we want to look at our expectations or assess them. Does what I want, what I expect, really matter? I think there's a very thin line between the concept of expectations, the beauty of the expectations, the excitement of the expectations, and manifestation, the word manifestation. Okay, two thoughts before I begin this section, because you might be going, what? Expectations, manifestation, what do they have to do with each other? Okay, first of all, I don't know where I really stand on the manifestation thing. And some part of me really just thinks we're born to do certain things. And we always had this thing within us that when we don't have other stuff clouding us or other people clouding us or getting in the way, that we will follow that thing within us. And it's so very obvious that and I'm sure you see this, especially if you've been doing this home ed thing for a while and really leaning into who you really are, who your kids really are, and moving toward a life that's really meaningful. When you see your children or you see your partner, if you're partnered, you can see each of you are very different and you have very different ideas of what you want to do with your time or with your life. And for me, I used to think this was super boring, and I totally understand why people think it might be, but my favorite things to do ever, the holy trinity of fun things to do: reading, writing, gardening. So you understand why I was saying maybe it's a bit boring. I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not aspiring to parachuting or to jujitsu or all the myriads of possibilities that are out there. I'm just like, gardening, reading, and writing brings me great joy. Was I always meant to do those things? I think it's useful to have expectations. There's something inside of us that says, what do I want for life? What do I want to do? What's meaningful? What will make this life feel alive? And I think that when we are listening within and we're asking ourselves what really matters to us, and we've had the opportunity to do that, when we really listen within, we can do some pretty amazing things. I know that I shared this with you on an episode like a couple years ago when I was a little girl and I really didn't feel understood or seen. And I lived in a lot of fear of what was going to happen next, because that's how I grew up. I would go into my little world and I would do some writing. I'd write stories, or I'd plan my wedding because I loved a bridal magazine, or I'd plan my house because I loved the idea of drafting a home, or I would clip photos of little babies in the Sears catalog and create my family. And I would even give them names, which I did not actually use, though my husband really does look like some of those guys that I clipped photos of in the Sears catalog. Funny. So it turns out I had these big dreams when I was little. And when I got the opportunity to build my house, I had a chance to build and design my home. I know that's privileged, and I'm grateful for it. It wasn't at all within the construct of a childhood that I was seeing. It wasn't at all something that I saw in my day-to-day. I lived in a tiny mobile home with 2 bedrooms between my sister, brother, and I, and they were tiny little rooms. And I was grateful for my home, never saw anything other than the home that I had, so I didn't know any different. But then somewhere along the way, maybe I saw a magazine on drafting homes, or maybe it was that we walked through one of those lottery homes where you could buy a lottery ticket and just dream and imagine. But I got this idea of, oh, I want to learn how to draft homes and see how a house would be designed. And so I played with paper, pencil, ruler, all those things. My non-math mind didn't really go into the drafting mode, but I really just imagined the interior of the home and how it would function. That's what I did when I was little. Fast forward a few decades, and I had the privilege of designing and building my own home. Not coincidentally, used Sarah Susanka's book, The Not So Big House, because Sarah Susanka is an architect. That's how I came to understand she existed. Then I learned about her Not So Big Life book. I built my home on her principles. Was that manifesting when I was little, or what was it? I don't know. I don't really know what it was. Did God put those desires in my heart so that I would grow up to walk in them? I do think so. Just like I was little and I was curious about what it would be like to draft a home and then one day have the privilege to actually make it happen. I love this home. And also, it needs cleaning. Do you know I got the baseboards cleaned last week? Baseboards. We'll be having a wedding here soon, so I'm motivated to have the place clean. But I always said I would hire a housekeeper when the kids grew up. You chose this homeschool life. Almost undoubtedly, you chose this life. And though it not be easy, I know, I know, I am very clear on the many ways it is not easy. And also, you chose this big, beautiful life called homeschooling. Why did you choose it? You chose it for a reason. I think your expectations are beautiful of yourself, of your kids, of what you want to offer them. I think it's all beautiful. I think you can make it happen. I don't think you need to find a way to carve out more time in your day. You can't anyway. I don't think you need to add more to your days to make it more meaningful. I think that will drive you crazy. I think you need to pare down and look at what really matters. You have to ask yourself, does this energize me? Do I see that it's wearing my child down? That's a sign. I see 5 really strong signs that your homeschool mom life needs a reset. You're carrying the mental load of everyone, and there's no off switch. You're showing up every day, but you're wondering every day, is it enough? Or is this life really sustainable? You want to enjoy this life, but the days feel heavy with unmet expectations. Like all your expectations aren't happening the way you thought. And there's always just one more thing to do. Or you feel guilty for not always wanting to be fully present with your kids. You're actually very aware that they want your attention, but so does your phone, and you choose your phone. Or you're giving and you're giving, but quietly, without sharing with anyone else, because you wouldn't say this out loud because it doesn't sound good and it's definitely not a good mom statement. You actually feel kind of resentful that nobody sees all the work that you're doing. They don't care about the work that you're doing. They don't give you space when you ask. They don't come when you ask. They don't do what you ask. That resentment keeps building. Those 5 things are signs that your homeschool life needs a reset. Expectations are the fuel for your home. Your expectations can help you design a beautiful life. This past weekend was a little different for me because my son was away. My husband was in another town keeping their hospital open. And I found myself with a quiet house and a wide open Saturday morning when I would normally be doing housework. And instead of doing my usual routine, because I just didn't feel like it, and since the sun was out and the patio was warm, I found myself with a quiet house, and I sat down with a cup of coffee and I opened up the file with my daughter's wedding plans. I stayed on the patio for 3 hours, just imagining, anticipating all the details of what that day could feel like. And it got me thinking about expectations. Because when it comes to something meaningful, something that we deeply care about, we naturally imagine it. We picture all the details working together and that the outcome will happen the way we want it. And I think that some of that is the best fun that we can have. It was so much fun. And it brought me right back to something that I've always loved. From my teens into my 20s, I was that girl, the one helping plan people's weddings and involved in all the details, floral bouquet creating, wedding cake decorating, and dreaming up what would make the day feel meaningful and special. If you have a daughter, I can tell you this day matters so much in a way that is really hard to explain unless you're in it. And if you have a son, I've been told it's different, although this seems hard for me to believe. I'll report back to you when I get there. But here's what it really got me thinking about: expectations. Because when it comes to moments like weddings and babies being born and milestone experiences, trips that we plan, or homeschool years that we plan, we carry great expectations. Sometimes wildly unrealistic ones. Like apparently I can't control the weather or something. But here's what I'm seeing now. It's not the expectations that are the problem. Maybe the expectations are actually the fun. The anticipation, the imagining, the leaning into what could be. That's fun. It's not separate from the actual experience of living it. It's how we savor something before it even arrives. So this week, I'm not inviting you to lower your expectations, but rather to reframe them, to look at them honestly. What are you looking forward to right now? Where are your expectations adding joy or anticipation? Where might you be creating pressure instead? What would it look like to hold both the excitement and the pragmatic reality at the same time? Because maybe it's not about having fewer expectations or lowering our expectations, but maybe it's about holding all of that with a little more awareness and a whole lot less grip. So here's what I ask you to do this week. Don't lower your expectations. Write one of them down, just one, and ask yourself, is this adding joy to my life or is adding pressure? Because there's a big difference between joy and pressure. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You need to do something about it. And if you want help doing that, if you want to sit with someone and actually look at your expectations honestly, figure out which ones are fueling you and which ones are quietly wearing you down. That's what we're doing on Friday in the Deschooling Breakthrough Workshop. We won't be stripping your homeschool back or talking you out of your dreams for your kids. It's about getting clarity so that what you're carrying, what you're doing, what you're expecting of yourself every day, and what you're expecting of your kids is actually worth carrying. You'll find all the details in the show notes. I'd love to see you there. Thanks for joining me today. I'd love to hear how this episode landed for you. Shoot me a message on socials, or better yet, share your thoughts in a podcast review wherever you listen to this episode. I want to remind you that every small intentional shift you make ripples outward into your kids, into your home, and in yourself. You don't have to overhaul everything. Make that 1% pivot toward inner alignment. If today's episode resonated, please hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you know another homeschool mom who's quietly carrying too much, share this with her. It might be exactly what she needs. We'll see you next week.